Ladies and gentlemen, in this Red Gaming Silicon video, let us discuss Nvidia's latest comments regarding PC gaming. They have said, or rather reiterated, PC is far superior to next-generation consoles. Nvidia have said in an interview, "We are proposing small form factor PCs to be a viable alternative to next-generation consoles. Enthusiast players want the ultimate games machine, and that's the PC." By the way, this was said by Matt Wright, that's W-R-I-G-H-T, who is the consumer sales manager at Nvidia. He also further added, "The PC platform is far superior to any console when it comes to gaming, plus you have all the extra functionality that comes that a computer brings." Wright also added to all of this that we want to make PC gaming as simple as possible, and we think we're already becoming much more relevant and appealing to casual gamers. With some glee, it would seem, he also pointed out that Steam has yet more players than Xbox Live, and there is a whole new generation who grow up playing PC titles like Minecraft or World of Tanks. There's a huge community who love playing games on their PC. End quote. So he was saying this to MCVUK, so you can check that out if you want to verify what I've said. So let's talk about this for just a moment. Well, in the UK, the PC is actually the fastest growing platform, so that's pretty damn impressive. Now, what are my opinions on this? I could actually do like a six-part video that would be like 30 minutes each part to go into the ins and outs of my opinions on PC gaming and its future, and I probably will at some point soon, actually, because I have a hell of a lot to say about it. But honestly speaking, from the perspective of someone, by the way, who's just bought a PlayStation 4, and I love the system, I do. Anyone who saw my unboxing of it, yes, you do get to see my face if you've not yet seen it. Yes, I love Killzone. Yes, I love other titles on it. I really do. I think they look great. I'm pleased with my purchase. I have had no issues with it. I think it's a great system, honestly. But, and you knew there was going to be a but, I still prefer PC. Now, there are reasons behind it. PC games look better. It pisses me off, honestly speaking, to pay like £50 plus for a PS4 game. Just for example, I have bought Killzone and Assassin's Creed, as well as some other games, and, you know, paying £50 just pisses me off. Just straight up, it just pisses me off. As a PC gamer, I'm paying like, you know, £30. I'm used to like 25 to 35, and that's acceptable. That's okay. I have no issue paying that all day long. But when digital, you know, downloads on the PS4, and Sony pointed out that, you know, it's a relatively new thing, new to what? You know, PC's been doing this for a long time, and I understand it's quite new to consoles, but even so, you know, charging like £54 plus for a game, it's just not cool, particularly when you can't even trade the bloody thing in. And yes, this sounds a little bit like a rant, and possibly it is. And I'm not, you know, I'm not having a go at the PlayStation 4. I like the PlayStation 4. I love the PlayStation 4. I'm going to be buying the Xbox One as well, because I do love console gaming. But in terms of price and so on, I did the maths for myself, and it actually works out that the amount of games that I buy a year, which is actually quite a few, even regardless of RGT, the channel obviously, even before RGT, I did a rough analysis of how many games I bought versus the equipment costs to upgrade, which the CPU I upgrade every like 3 years or so. GPU I upgrade every 18 or so months, possibly every, 2 years, depending, and I sell on the old one. So I basically calculated all the equipment costs, and for me, obviously your mileage is going to vary completely, so I'm not saying this for everyone, but for me, it worked out to be actually slightly cheaper, especially when you're taking into account things such as Steam sales and Humble Bundle, and I still prefer the PC control method for some games, not all, but certainly the graphics are still better on PC. That's just, how it is, which is cool. I understand. There are major issues with PCs. the major one, as been pointed out by Nvidia, is that, quite simply speaking, there is this air of mysticism and complexity that the PC needs to shake, honestly. I feel that it's actually no longer as complicated as what it used to be. I mean, goodness gracious, back before Steam and Origin, and, you know, I actually don't mind Origin, I'll be honest. Origin Uplay are actually okay once you get used to them. And I actually quite like the fact that Steam has competition. I do not want a situation where the only digital platform would be Steam. Sure, it would be easier from the perspective of, you know, managing games, but it would also be kind of bad for the market, so I don't want that. Just how I don't want, say, the PS4 to be dominant, necessarily super dominant over the Xbox One. It's just, I think, is bad for gamers. But anyway, that's a slight aside. I think the problem for the PC is that there is this air of, okay, this is very complicated, I can't be bothered, I just want something simple. And honestly speaking, it's not that bad now. For example, Steam, and I'll just talk about Steam because I think most people understand it best. Steam will automatically download your patches for you, okay? So you don't need to worry about that. Back in the day on, you know, say the late 90s, it was a nightmare. Because let's say you had version 1.05 of a game, and let's say the server you're trying to connect to had 1.4 or 1.06, because that's the latest version. Let's just assume 1.06 is the latest version. Well, you're shit out of luck. You're not going to be able to join it. And so there was always this issue where you may have one version, your buddy might have another one, and there was mod incompatibilities, and oh, it was horrible. I loved multiplayer gaming on the PC because it was smoother on than the consoles back then, but it just wasn't good in terms of ease. It's like, you know, GameSpy and everything else, they helped, but it wasn't smooth sailing. It was pretty much like going into the perfect storm, you know, with George Clooney on board. And honestly, I think the PCs have moved on quite substantially. We've got Steam OS and the Steam boxes which are coming out. I'm hoping that they've got like a rating system that would easily tell gamers, okay, this is what you've got. So this is completely arbitrary, and honestly I'm thinking of this on the fly, but what would be really awesome is if they simply had like numbers. So for example, the CPU, rather than being like let's say rather than saying like, I don't know, AMD 2500, I don't know, like a 2400 megahertz CPU, I'm just making it up. Rather than that, it would just give you a CPU rating. So for example, your CPU rating would be 110. That's not megahertz, that's just saying that your CPU rating is 110, and that would be your Steam machine. So if it was something like a Steam machine, it would be like CPU rating 110, memory rating 74, GPU, I don't know, 100, just making it up. And then on the specifications of the game in Steam, it would tell you what you need, and I think that would be really easy for people to do. Or, what would also be really awesome is if you were to, before you bought games on Steam, to simply press a button, and it would basically say, oh, okay, this is the specifications you've got, this is the specifications you need, you meet the criteria, you can go ahead and buy the game. I think that would also be cool. Of course, everyone has different opinions of what's acceptable. For example, personally speaking, 60 FPS on, you know, shooters is pretty good. If I'm playing single player, for example, Killzone on the PlayStation 4, I'm okay with 30. I know some people it really pisses them off. Personally, I'm cool with 30. But for multiplayer, no. For racing games, no. For fighting games, I couldn't deal with it. I'll just be totally honest. But everyone's different. Everyone has different opinions on the resolutions that they want, and that's the difficulty, of course, with PCs. But I don't think that we're in a situation which is unwinnable. I use quotation marks with that. I think we will figure it out. I honestly do believe it. And I think Steam is one of the ways forward. Nvidia have also began launching their own product lines of software to help to better integrate this stuff, to better help you set the various graphical settings for your game. So it will, you know, at least to a degree, automatically configure, oh, okay, this profile with this game says that your texture quality should be high, your resolution is, set automatically as well, your, shadow quality, all this stuff. So if you don't know what you're configuring, if you're one of those players that honestly just doesn't know, or they don't care, they just want to play the game, then I think that's one way to go. I think that would be pretty awesome. AMD have obviously quite a few fingers in pies right now. AMD are obviously pretty much developing the technology for the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. There is some debate on just how close the PS4's API is to current OpenGL and so on. As far as I understand, and obviously some of this is proprietary, so not all of it's being released, but the PS4 API is very similar to Mantle, which AMD are trying to push. AMD are trying to push Mantle, but it's proprietary technology in some ways. But AMD have said, yeah, go ahead, Nvidia, you can use it. So it's up to Nvidia, really, if they're going to start pushing that technology. I'm hoping they do, honestly. I think it would be good if they did. It probably would require them to do quite a lot of rewriting of their driver structure. So I'm not really sure exactly how they would do that, because I don't do driver development and I certainly don't work with Nvidia. I don't know enough about that to make comments on exactly what they would have to do. It's, really only Nvidia knows what they would have to do with their own structure to, make that work. But I have a feeling they could, if they, so wish. They might have to, however, wait for, say, the new GTX 800 series. But I guess we're just going to have to see. PC gaming does have quite a few advantages. Obviously, some of the biggest games, like, for example, League of Legends, is absolutely huge. We've got games like StarCraft 2, which, people are being paid just ridiculous amounts of money on it, honestly speaking. And I don't know. I think that PC gaming is going to have to adapt a little bit. I think that there is a bit of a... How can I put this not to piss everyone off who is watching this video? I think there is a little bit of an air of superiority that maybe has to slightly go from the perspective of all PC gamers. Not everyone, but I think there is that I'm a PC gamer, lowly console fanboys, crap. Consoles are crap. I don't think that's the right attitude. I think that if we want PCs to flourish as a platform, we should be trying to demonstrate, how they are advancing, what technologies, rather than just saying, oh, the Xbox One, is like 1% of the power, and obviously I'm just, exaggerating for effect, 1% of the power of the latest PC, lols, why are you buying the Xbox One? I don't think that's conducive to helping the platform. I don't think that that's good for anyone. I don't think that's, I think that's just harmful, I'll just be honest. I think consoles, however, are not doomed. I love console gaming. I really do. I just happen to prefer PCs, and I am someone who grew up with both. I've owned, let's just say I've owned a PlayStation 1, I've owned a Saturn, I've owned a Genesis, I even owned a Sega Master System. I don't know if it was called the Master System in the States. My memory has failed me. But I've owned quite a few systems. I was gaming since I was a really young kid. So yeah, I love consoles, but I just prefer, for many ways, the PC. But I just think that it has some areas that it needs to fix itself in. There's obviously also some technological issues. Sure, the PC has ridiculous amounts of GPU power, for example. Fair enough. But it also needs to solve some issues regarding, say, draw calls and so on. I might sound a bit like a broken record, but right now they are lackluster, to say the least. It's also some issues to do with multi-threading on consoles. On PCs. I think that that's going to be helped quite substantially, actually, from the next generation consoles. I truly believe that the next generation consoles and PC are going to have a lot of similarities, and I think that the technology from the next gen consoles, if anything, really helps the PC move forward. Because I'm not just talking about, game engines can move forward in terms of their, textures or whatever, but I'm actually referring to things such as multi-threading and, the idea of parallel computing, much better techniques in terms of lighting and so on. Physics, definitely, because of GPU compute. A lot of that stuff easily doable on PC. I have some issues regarding Nvidia as well. As much as I love Nvidia graphics cards, I've had quite a few. I've also owned a lot of AMD cards as well. I don't necessarily agree with Nvidia having PhysX. That's with an X rather than ICS. I don't necessarily agree with it being proprietary. I think it's harmful, and I understand one of the benefits, or it's one of the perks of Nvidia. You're supposed to, embrace it. Problem is, it doesn't necessarily move the platform forward. What happens is that as a PC developer, let's say you're developing a PC game, you need to decide, do I develop the PhysX subroutines, which require quite a bit of work, may I add, for, say, I don't know, 50% of my audience. I'm just, rounding it up. So should I do that? The answer, quite honestly, is possibly, but then a lot of people who own a Nvidia card, they might own an older generation, and sure, technically, say even the 8800 GTX, which is pretty old now, I can't remember the release date, it's like, mid-2000s really, sure, technically that could run PhysX, but let's just be honest, older cards are going to struggle, because PhysX batters the GPU. He really does. It pretty much hits it over the head constantly with a truncheon and says, no, you're a bad GPU. You're going to struggle with this because it's very intensive computing, because, that's just what it is, really, because it's doing advanced, calculations for fog, lighting, even things such as objects movement. Check out some footage of Batman and you'll get an idea. And there are other games, but consequently, this simply means that there's just not enough games that really support hardware physics. And I pretty much am required to own a Nvidia card because of the channel. Because a lot of people like to see the games running with PhysX on, but at the same time, I don't necessarily think that that helps Nvidia. I think that it would probably increase the chances of a lot more developers utilizing it, embracing it, and I think it would also help the PC platform more if Nvidia weren't doing that. Which is very similar to what AMD's thoughts were. God, I can't speak English suddenly. I think it's very similar to what AMD's thoughts were when it came to Mantle. They just decided, you know what, it doesn't make sense for us to have it proprietary. It's not going to increase our market share that much, because it might mean that, basically very few games developers are already going to take it up. And obviously DICE are going to be using it with something like Battlefield 4, and we know from the comments there's not been an exact measurement share, as far as I'm aware anyway, of frame rates. So we don't know, for example, that game runs at 60 on a card A is going to run at 80 using the same card A if it was using Mantle. So say DX11 versus Mantle, we don't know what the percentage of performance is going to be. It could be 6 frames per second, say from 60 to 66, just throwing it out there, or it could be something like 150 frames per second. I just don't know, because I've not really said. From what the hints are, it's substantial. So I don't call, 10%, which would obviously be 60 to, say, 66. I don't really consider that substantial. So my guess is it's going to be a lot more. There's been hints it's substantially more. We know that it can certainly handle an order of magnitude more in terms of draw calls. I don't exactly know what their exact aims are for draw calls, because they're saying it depends heavily on optimizations from the game's developer, but pretty much I'm guessing we're going to be seeing like 5 to possibly 12. They've said that on average, with a bit of optimization, it hits 10 times draw calls, which is actually substantial. Yeah. Anyway, I can only apologise. I actually didn't realise this video was quite as lengthy as this. I've been ranting for about 20 minutes. See, this is what happens when I get into a subject I'm passionate about. I can only hope you've enjoyed the video, my friends. I will see you soon. Take care. Bye for now.